We are live on Facebook. Good evening. Thank you for joining us, depending on where you are connecting from. If you're in Washington, D.C., it's a little bit over 3 o'clock today. It's 3:25. And if you're in Yaoundé, it's obviously a little before 8:30. Presidential elections 2025 is the topic of our conversation today. And our guest tonight is obviously somebody who is well known in the media and political landscapes for his firm views regarding change, regarding good governance. He happens to have led a secessionist faction of the Anglophone War. He happens to have been the president of Ambazonia, but also the elder brother to one of the most emblematic rebel leaders who was finally killed sometime 2 years ago. I speak here of Field Marshal, who was redoubted and who was feared by regime forces. Chris Anu is going to be our guest. His name is resonating around the world today because a former Minister of Communications, who is a candidate for the presidential election of this year and easily a favorite, mentioned him in his trip to Bamenda during a rally today when he apologized to Cameroonians, to Anglophones, for hurting them, he said, in the discharge of his duty while he was spokesperson for the government. He also tells us, or he also told us, that he spoke in the morning with Chris Anu and said he was going to be visiting the Northwest, his home, and he was going to tell them that he was sorry for the way he behaved, for the things he said, but had also asked for the protection of Chris Anu. He also declared that Chris Anu is one of his best friends. They disagree, but they have solid conversations and respect each other. Chris Anu is here to tell us today, if they are friends, how the conversations go, because that was obviously a minister who didn't have the kindest of things to say about Anglophones in the middle of the crisis, even before the crisis became a full-fledged war. But also, he discusses his vision. He recently stepped down from the Ambazonia Gal that he has been leading and passed the baton on to another leader. He's going to be discussing that. He'll be telling us about the lockdowns and the implications on the current presidential election in the French-speaking parts of the country. Without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and bring him on, and then we can have the conversation for a little over 45 minutes. Chris, it's so happy to have you here today. I appreciate your time. May I say that you and I had a conversation, and we were speaking about the mobilization that we see, unprecedented mobilization we've been seeing with the Tchiroma candidacy. And little did I know that you were friendly or quite close friends, or little did we know that the minister was going to say these things. How did you receive these videos that are now viral about Issa Tchiroma telling people or revealing to the world that you were one of his best friends?
Angie, thank you for inviting me to the show. As for the video with Issa Tchiroma, I really don't have much to say. To call me a close friend, I think is an overstatement. Yes, I have spoken to him on a good number of occasions, but to call me a close friend, I think he's speaking as the politician that we know. I had no idea of him going to Bamenda. I was surprised to see that clip, just as you were surprised seeing it. In fact, you forwarded to me. I had no idea that Issa Tchiroma was in Bamenda, wanting the people in Bamenda to believe Chris Anu, gave him permission and protection to be in Bamenda again. That is just an overstatement. I had no idea he was having a campaign in Bamenda. Having said that, I would say that I have had quite a number of discussions with him. I have also had quite a number of discussions with the daughter. I actually had the daughter on my show last week, and we had an elaborate question and answer session in which I asked the daughter whatever question that anybody interested in the political game in Cameroon would love to hear. And I think she was frank in providing the answers to her ability. For the father, I just cannot tell who he is. I don't think he has changed much from being the Tchiroma, the communication minister for Paul Biya to, I think he just still the same, the old Tchiroma in the new costume, trying to get the people believe he is born again, he is changed. But having said that too, let me say that if you remember the campaign between Al Gore and George Bush here in the U.S., yes, in the U.S. years ago, a commentator said Al Gore came across as the supervisor who fired him from work, while George Bush came across as a friend who took him out for lunch. And I can equate Tchiroma with George Bush, whom you disagree with, but he looks friendly and likable enough for you to disagree, but still go to lunch. I think Tchiroma embodies that kind of character in the Cameroon political setting. You can like him, I mean, you can hate him, but he has this likable personality that no matter how much you disagree with him, you end up thinking that you can sleep the same bed with him and not be afraid what will happen over the night. So that is how much I know of Tchiroma. I am not, of course, endorsing him. We never, of course, endorse anything from La République du Cameroun. Of course, we have banned that election in Ambazonia.
Mr. Anu, from what you're saying, you have a great working relationship with him, but to call you a best friend is a reach.
I think that's an overstatement still. Not a working relationship with him. I just know him as a politician that we can exchange views. I think if you listen to him in his statement, he said, we disagree, but we talk. I will talk to any person on the other side, even if Paul Biya calls me today, I will not say, hey, you moron, you are calling me. I will not say that. I will say, hey, how can I help you? What can we talk about today? I will not drop the phone. That is just the way I look at politics. You always open the doors to dialogue.
So you've made it clear you will not be endorsing him. You were not aware of his trip and you discovered it on social media as well. But also, you also just said something that you are banning all elections or everything to do with La République conversation. What about the close to or more than 1 million voters in the South? In the Northwest, they're speaking of close to 700,000 voters. About 658,000 voters. In the Southwest, close to 500,000 voters. And there's been this push. The crisis has become a full-fledged war since the past 7 years. Isn't it time for you to soften a little bit to give those who want to, cast their votes or be involved in the La République election to shoot their shot? Even give them maybe 2 to 3 days to be able to exercise their rights to vote and then continue with the lockdowns. Are you flexible to that, or you're still intransigent?
I think the word is not intransigent. The word is we would be making a fool of ourselves and the independent struggle we are engaged in if we should say to Ambazonians, go out and vote for La République du Cameroon's candidates. ANGIE, remember 2017, we declared a free and independent sovereign southern Cameroons, which we named Ambazonia. We stand on that word. We were serious. We were just not trying to make a political statement. We were serious with what we meant. And so today, think about us making a 360 degrees and say, go back to Cameroon, vote for their candidates because change is coming. Again, we will look like fools, like people who do not know, who do not understand what they are fighting for. We declared our territory sovereign in 2017. And so we cannot turn around and say to Ambazonia, go and participate in elections in La République du Cameroon. The question would be, for all these years, since 1961, that Southern Cameroonians have been voting, participating in Cameroon elections, what change? What change have you brought? Nothing. Zero. So it doesn't make any sense. Look at, Angie, hold on a second there. Look at the campaign of Chairman John Frondi from 1990 to the time he became insignificant and passed. Southern Cameroonians poured out in their millions to vote because of Frondi. What change did it make? Did it bring anything new to the Southern Cameroon? Of course not. So we cannot be talking about going back to the vomit today just because some politicians who want to serve their bellies are telling us the moment has come for change. We do not see that change in the horizon.
So there's been a push, and there's been a guild of people, Anglophones, who believe that Tchiroma represents the aspirations or is the best shot to trigger the end of the BR regime. And this is based off of the crowds and the mobilization we are seeing. In Bafoussam, it was a mammoth crowd. In the northern parts of the country, there were seas of people. Today, even in Bamenda, he mobilized more than all other political parties that are involved in this current election. And so the desire, and I'm going to quote a lady like Rebecca Enonchong, is that he is the opportunity to trigger change. He is a tool to trigger change, which could also, ease out the conversation you want to have with La République, right? Because right now you are in gridlock. The BR regime has refused to acknowledge you, has refused to sit down at the dialogue table, and has just allowed people, the millions of people in the Northwest and Southwest, to continue to suffer. The troops continue to be sent to those parts of the countries with shoot to kill orders. And these people are saying, we know that there's a serious Anglophone problem that has lasted since the 60s, and we also know that the war has been going on for 7 years, but this time you have a northern candidate who has support from the south, but also from the north, that has usually been the real bastion of the BR regime. He's usually allied himself with northern politicians to be able to win, and the popular imagery is that those are the most populated parts of the country. And so there are people with a line of thought who believe maybe this might actually be the opportunity for you people to have your independence that you've been asking for, because this might usher in a new leader who could be more open to conversation. Is this something you have given thought to?
We've given thought to that, but also we've given thought to the fact that we've seen the crowds before. We saw the crowds with Frondi. We saw the crowds with Camto, and remember Camto just being one of the Francophones, being who they are. Camto refused to talk to Ambazonian leaders. Camto held a meeting in Canada, and when Ambazonians show up with their blue and white mufflers and flags, he refused them access into the hall of that meeting and promised a separate meeting with Ambazonians, which never happened. So you have now the case of Tchiroma, and yes, I talked to Tchiroma. You will want to believe, if I trusted that this guy embodies the kind of change you are describing, we'll be backing down and saying, let's give him a chance. No, Tchiroma is just another Francophone politician. Again, look at, he was in Bamenda, letting the people to know, Chris, I know, get him permission to come to Bamenda, whereas I do not even know his political campaign schedule. It took me by surprise to know he was in Bamenda. But this is the point, Angie. We have tried this for 64 years. Yesterday was October 1st, marking the 64th year of joining La République du Cameroun. Yes. And what can we show for it? Tchiroma is coming out from the same system. In fact, a big player in the system that made us what we are today. There is the slaves, the marginalized territory, the annexed and colonized territory that we are today. I know that he is out talking about some federation, nothing being, no discussion being a taboo. I won't take any politician from La République du Cameroon by their word until they sit down at that moment and try to do exactly what they are doing. I have said to Tchiroma, this is what I've told him for people who understand. I talk to him. I said to Tchiroma, if you want us to believe in what you are doing, you want Ambazonians to support you, let's do this. How about you boycott the elections and get other candidates to boycott the elections? Or ask for a postponement of the elections. And then you, the candidates, sit down with the Ambazonian leadership and let's talk about the way forward after the election. If we agree on a referendum, we know that we are coming into the election to support you because we have a shared agenda. But no, they don't want to meet with the Ambazonian leaders before the election, because after the elections, we have no control over what they do. But if we agree on something before the election, after the election, they don't do it, we have something to show as an agreement we reach. But without that, there is nothing we can show as something will hold them on after the election.
But Mr. Anu, speaking about boycotting elections, that is a touchy topic because in the 90s when Frundi or the SDF boycotted elections, legislative elections or local elections, they were blamed. In 2020, when Mr. Campto boycotted elections, his party boycotted elections, the same thing. And boycotting doesn't seem to work for politicians in Cameroon because
I actually meant to say postpone, call for a postponement. Yes, call for a postponement.
But do you think that Tchiroma, freshly resigning from the government, barely trying to reposture himself, break away from the alliance with the Biya government, was going to have a voice loud enough at that time to obtain a postponement of the election?
I think the moment you begin to gather the kind of traction that we see him gathering, he then has the influence to say to other politicians, listen, we think that this Ambazonian conflict is the #1 conflict pulling down this country. And if we are serious with ourselves and to the people, let's postpone, let's a petition for a postponement.
That would give the Biya regime a Sovietic result. You would find ourselves, they would go ahead and carry out the election the same way it was done in the Northwest and Southwest for the legislative and municipals. And you have people becoming CPDM MPs with 3 votes because the elections have been boycotted. And that's the whole conundrum that we find ourselves in.
But again, you are not getting the point. The CPDM has always done that. Look at in Bamenda. Does anybody vote for a governor there? Of course not. Who votes for the senators? Biya appoints them. The house, the so-called regional house of chiefs, are they elected? Biya appoints them. So if Biya go and appoint himself president and then appoint his councillors, what is the difference? There is no difference. So there is no need to say to people, go out and vote as if their vote count. It doesn't. We've known that for 64 years.
So are you open to any form? I know you mentioned earlier that you're ready to have a conversation with everybody. And I'm going to ask you a few questions about the kind of conversations you were having with the Minister of Communication at the time, the minister or the former Minister of Communication when he was a reigning minister. Just the kind of communications, because those were some of the hottest periods or years of the Anglophone War, or the most shocking, because to say they were the hottest, people are still dying now, kids are still not allowed to go to school, but it looks like human beings in Cameroon have become accustomed to what is going on. And so they just go by unnoticed, the tragedy that is still occurring there. So we're going to discuss that. But are you open to some kind of dialogue? If there were to be a new president, are you ready to sit down on the table? Or are you saying that because you have declared independence, even though your territory is still not yet recognized by international organizations, are you ready to come to some level of compromise if the government were to change?
Of course, Angie, we are all the time, 100% of the time, and not just me. I think every other faction in the Amazonian struggle is always open to dialogue. We don't care what they call it. For a dialogue that is on a level playing field, it is free, it is fair, our security is guaranteed. We are always open to it. Remember, there was once the talk of a Swiss talk, and we were on the table, we were ready to go. And then you heard of Canada. It is the Amazonian faction that was there. In both cases, it was Cameroon that always pulled out. And then they put together their so-called Grand National Dialogue, in which I believe you know, it wasn't a level playing field. It wasn't fair. Security wasn't there for us. And that is the only occasion we have said, this is not the kind of dialogue we want. And so at this moment, I'm telling you, as I said from the beginning, if Paul Biya should call me and say, Chris, we need to talk about Amazonia, I will not say, you moron, shut the phone. I will say, Mr. President, sir, how can I help you? I will open the door. I will be forthcoming. Tell him my peace of mind without shutting the door. That is what it means. Listen, in this struggle, we know that it will take both sides for a compromise, for a solution to be reached. I think if they knew from the beginning what they know now, that the 2 cubes of sugar would last undissolved for almost a decade, I think they would have gone on their knees begging. And so, yeah, there are possibilities. A new leader in La République du Cameroon, or if not a new leader, a Biya, still rig the elections and stay in power and make a phone call and say, Chris, we really need to talk. I am ready. My microphone will be ready to talk.
12 candidates are running for president. Of course, there's one of them who is conspicuously absent, who is running for an 8th term. But the other 11 are there of the opposition. Is there any one of them that strikes you as a candidate that if they won, you would like to sit down and have a conversation with?
Any of them won.
Do you have a preference?
Win. There is no preference because they are all lot of Republicans. They are all lot of Republicans.
Isn't that a blanket statement?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that a blanket statement to say they are all the same?
Because they all act like children of the same mother. That's the way they act. So, but yes, the doors are open. Any of them that wins, we will be ready. We will have an open door policy. If they approach us, we will sit down, listen to them, make our proposals. Let me say something. We should not forget. These politicians, they will promise you everything while they are out campaigning. But the moment they win, get into power, they no longer listen to you, they listen to the French. That is why we have very little respect for them at this moment. But if any of them win and invite us to talk, we are ready to talk.
Isn't there a change of tides currently? We've seen France in recent months acknowledge the pre-independence massacres, their role that they played in the murder of Ernest Wanje, Umnyobe. Don't you think things have evolved and we are not necessarily being puppeteered by the French anymore? Is that the reason? I mean, it's as good as saying that if an Anglophone were to be president, they'll be taking marching orders from the United Kingdom. Shouldn't you give them, after all these years, the benefit of the doubt because there's been more exposure? People are aspiring for more. People have seen how leadership functions across the world. And so they're more open to conversation. They are bolder. Look at Cabral B and the statements that he's making. Hiram Iyodi, a Canada-trained engineer who has had the opportunity to see the rest of the world. I mean, Joshua Osi of the SDF, who has a Swiss mom, so he has exposure, and many others. Akere Muna, a solid lawyer who was Batonier, who has a track record of integrity and who has handled with bravery issues of corruption. Don't you think that these are people who have the exposure enough to not let themselves be puppeteered by or be treated like puppets by allied forces?
Well, they say talk is cheap, isn't it? You talked about the French confessing all their sins of yesteryears. Has that confession stopped them from siphoning the resources in Cameroon? Has it stopped them from injecting their fingers into the treasuries in their former colonies? Of course not. They just still do the same thing they have done year in, year out. You talk about all this Joshua Osi, Akere Muna. These are men who cannot even for once acknowledge their own people having annexed, colonized, and enslaved, marginalized. And you think we can gain anything from them? Frundi started the SDF, 1990, and everybody heard him and said, finally, the Southern Cameroons will change. At the end of the day, by the time he died, he couldn't live in Bamenda. Think about that. He couldn't live in Bamenda, the hometown, the birthplace of the SDF. Why? Because these politicians, they fight for their bellies and not for the people. We are looking for a situation where Southern Cameroonians have their independence. They are able to elect their leaders. They are able to elect their parliamentarians, their senators, their House of Chiefs. They are able to carry out their own development initiatives and not have to sit and wait for Yaoundé to pass a decree that water should flow in Boya.
But the fear at this point is all of the elite that you are combating have deserted the hotbeds of the crisis, the Northwest and the Southwest. And so your critics believe that you paralyzing the economy of the Northwest and Southwest is really just hurting the poor man. You boycotting or calling on lockdowns and kids not being able to go to school is making a bad situation 10 times worse, because you would have a group of children who in 10 years would have missed 7 years of education. Is this something you give thought to?
No, I think your articulation is absolutely wrong there. We do not stop children from going to school. We have said every child in Ambazonia should go to a community school. And our definition of a community school, all the private schools, including mission schools, privately owned schools, and some other schools put together through community effort. The only schools we do not want to see in Ambazonia are la République du Cameroon, so-called government schools that really do not exist. So Ambazonian children are all obliged to seek education because it is very critical. It is very, very important. We have seen what happened to South Africa in the days of apartheid when the blacks were not able to study. When apartheid was eventually over, South Africa began to recruit teachers from foreign countries to come and teach their kids. It pulled that black economy in South Africa years backward. We know the importance of education. We do not want that to happen in our communities. And so that is not our point. As far as lockdowns are concerned, that is a symbolic existence of war in our territory. And if you say that it is messing up with the economy of the two regions, no, I would say it is messing up with the economy of Cameroon. And you should realize that if Cameroon realize the impact of the war on its people, the people they want the world to believe are its people and its economy, guess what? They're able to call this thing off the next day and call for a truce. Because
Mr. Andrew, you're speaking about people who clearly have shown they do not care. You see, and that's the interesting part of this whole crisis, is that we have a regime that has, even though those parts of the country are bankrupting the entire nation, as long as his seat of power in Yaoundé is still present and he can rule ad eternum, he doesn't give a damn about the Northwest and Southwest. And
so we should abandon it. So are you saying that because they do not care, we should surrender to people who do not care? Is that what you mean?
No, that's not what I mean. I wanted to ask you if you don't want to re-strategize, because it seems like they don't care about what the measures that you are taking to call for their attention and to put them in a corner so that they address the very serious problem that is the massacre of Anglophones.
Don't forget this, Angie. From the beginning, they call us 2 cubes of sugar, right? They thought they actually said in 2 weeks, they will use 1 week to crush the Southwest, use the other week to crush the Northwest, as they call it. It has gone to 9 years. 9 years, and they haven't done it. That is to demonstrate that they don't care, as you say, and still they haven't called for a trust, a dialogue, or a settlement. You have to understand that this thing turned from a crisis into a conflict, a war. And in war, sacrifices are paid. Freedom is not cheap. It is not given. You have to fight for it. You have to take it, because it will not be given to you. So if you say change strategy, I don't know what you mean by change strategy. Are you talking about laying down arms, canceling ghost towns? That is a symbolic presence of war in Ambazonia. Ambazonians are not complaining that they are suffering under ghost towns. Ambazonians are saying we have gone too far to want to wave the white flag of surrender. We are in this. If you were in my place and received the messages that I received, and you step out and say, let's give that Republic to Cameroon a chance, an opportunity to fix this, or maybe through the election, let's just go and vote, we may have a chance. People, the same Ambazonians you think are suffering, will stone you because they are hell-bent on achieving their own freedom and independence. So there's nothing like new strategy. There's nothing like new strategy. New strategy means capitulation, and we are not ready to do that. It's not going to happen. If Cameroon is serious to end the war, they can call for dialogue tomorrow. And when you call for dialogue, ceasefire comes, and then confidence measures are put into place, and some level of peace comes about as a result of that. But until then, we have to keep on fighting.
So in the month of May, an investigation conducted by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, along with the FBI and Diplomatic Security Service, led to the federal indictment of a Cameroonian national that you know very well, Eric Tato. Eric Tato. And he was charged with conspiring to provide material support to armed separatist groups in Cameroon and making threatening communications to injure or kidnap Cameroonian civilians. So there's been clearly a collaborative task between the Cameroonian government and the US government to begin to crack down on separatist leaders who are US based. Aren't you afraid for your own safety or freedom that you could get arrested on grounds of war crimes, that you could get arrested for threatening and calling on the injuring or harming or kidnapping of people?
That's the wrong characteristics to make. First of all, I'm not involved in any harming of our own people on the ground. Secondly, Eric Tato wasn't yes, he was indicted. An indictment is not guilt, you know that. He is actually behind bars now, not because of that particular indictment, because of another case entirely. I'm hearing of rape involved, a rape of a woman involved, which is the main reason he is now behind bars. But talking about the ongoings on the ground, listen, I am not afraid of anything because I have done everything in a way that somebody prosecuting war ought to do. I am here in the USA. My mother, 80 years old, has gone to Cameroon jail. My sister has been in the Cameroon jail for close to 2 years, after going through their criminal military tribunal. My brother has been killed in this war. My father has died in the course of this. Our family home in the BLM completely burnt down and doesn't exist anymore. In spite of this, I think I am one leader in this struggle who has believed our civilians remain untouchable. But everything, even an ant wearing the uniform of La République du Cameroon is an enemy. And if possible, not just Ambazonian fighters, but every civilian in Ambazonia seeing anything in La République du Cameroon's uniform should bring that thing down, should decimate it. They are the enemies. And if America is working with Cameroon, listen, I think it will be ignorance. America fought exactly the way we are fighting before they could become an independent country. Freedom, again, is not free. It is not given. It is taken. And we must fight and do everything we can without being intimidated, without being afraid, to win the war. People who have gone to jail here, who have been indicted and convicted and are serving prison time here, maybe they did one thing or the other. I am waiting for them to come and tell me, you send for your fighters to go and kill that person. You send for your fighters to go and kidnap that person. That you will never hear from me. Let me tell you something, Angie, that I don't think you know. I have been interrogated, I think about 4 times by the FBI. They came to my house. They questioned me for about 2 hours. I answered their questions. They came in November 2022, raided my house early in the morning, went away with 32 items, including phones, laptops, computers, desktops. And it's been 3 years now. I am still waiting for their indictment. I traveled to Ghana in May. I was returning. They arrived at the airport. They confiscated my phones and returned them after 4 days. I traveled to the Philippines. I returned on August 1st. They confiscated my phones and laptops at the airport, and they are still with them. But I do not renege because I know I fight this thing with all the strength within me, but I make sure I do it the right way. I do the right things.
If you're watching us live, Chris Anu is our guest. He's the former president of the Ambazonian Governing Council, and you would correct me if I did not speak the words correctly.
No, Ambazonian Interim Government.
And thank you so much. He is the former president of the Ambazonia Interim Government, and you are well aware that you have several factions of the Ambazonian Guild of the Anglophone War. Do you guys ever come together to agree on that you should have one head, or are you going to have different presidents running Ambazonia?
Of course, in every struggle, you always have factions. Even in the United States fight for independence, 35% of Americans did not want to separate from the British. So there was this internal opposition. You go to the apartheid movement in South Africa, where every black person would agree they were being oppressed and marginalized. Again, they were divided. Chief Buthelezi was essentially fighting on behalf of the state against the ANC of Mandela. And so our case is not different, but I think for sure at the end of the day, our leaders would be able to come together to resolve their differences because they have their minds in the right place. A free and independent Ambazonia, if they do not agree now, I have no doubt when the moment comes, they will put their heads together to agree on a single decision that frees Ambazonia.
This question continues to come up. What candidate from La République would you be supporting? And even if you're not supporting, who do you kind of have a penchant for? And there's two questions. And then the second one is, wouldn't federalism provide what Ambazonia is looking for? So I think the intention is to see if you're ready to reach some kind of a compromise. And that is from Mac Bolan.
Well, actually, I did not think that at this moment anybody in La République du Cameroon is in the place to dictate to Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonians, what form of state Ambazonians should accept. I think the best way to talk about federalism is to take it to a referendum. Take it to a referendum, and when you take it to a referendum, the question should be, do you want a federation or you want an independent Southern Cameroon? And before you ask, do you want federation, you should be able to spell out exactly what form of federation you are putting on that table. So if you take it to a referendum and the people say, well, we've been with Cameroon for 64 years, we can do federation, then that is what the people want. But if the people say we have been together with Cameroon for 64 years and what a mistake we made, we want our own country, we want our own independent country, that is the result. So federalism, I hear it all over the place, cannot be dictated from those who hold power. I will not object to any federation talks, but my suggestion would be, let's put it to a referendum. Spare your kind of federation. Let the people of Ambazonia stand on their independence. Let's put it to the table and let the people vote what they want.
Another question comes from the chat in here, and it's from Claude Zanesti, and it says, if you were to give Southern Cameroons a special status, like Quebec in Canada, a fair enough middle ground to resolve the situation, would that be one for you?
Who is in the place to give Southern Cameroon a special status? The people of the Southern Cameroons? Again, nobody in Yaoundé is in the place to give the Southern Cameroon any special status. I think the solution to this is a referendum where the people of the Southern Cameroons themselves decide for themselves what they want.
Chris Anu is our guest tonight. He is the former president of the Ambazonia interim government. He's here to take questions. He's become a star again because of the declarations that were made by Issa Tchiroma today in Bamenda. Issa Tchiroma, who is running for president under the FSNC, a former minister who resigned from government about 3 months ago and decided to pull out of an alliance with the BR regime. But this leads me to ask you a question. What has become of the interim government now that you are no longer presiding it?
Well, the interim government is still there, very strong, kicking. When I took over in 2022, I promised I wasn't going to hold it for over a term. And last September 26, my term came to an end. Elections were conducted, and Dr. Anthony Epa, who lives in Chicago, became the new leader of the interim government. and he is just taking over from where I ended. Now, let me add this. I am not going anywhere. I am my soul is still in the interim government and in the struggle for the liberation of Ambazonia. Only my functions have changed. I am no more in control, but I am part of the machine. That's what I can say.
So your critics believe that the Amazonian crisis has become a money-making machine, that it's been very lucrative, and that's the reason why some people are holding on to power and secretly desiring for this crisis not to come to an end. Is this true? Are you rich from the crisis?
Well, if I was rich, Angie, you know, African leaders, why would I be quickly handing over if I was that? If there was such money opportunity, I would have sat still like others have done, right? Listen, but more seriously, this thing is not about enriching others. Maybe others have been enriched in the course of this struggle. I am not one of them. Instead, I have sown everything, my time, my family, my everything, my professional life into this struggle. I've never asked for a dime. I have never asked for a salary. Nothing, zero, zero. The reason being that people see what I do today. Those who know me in my secondary school, high school years, and my professional life know that what I'm doing today for Ambazonia didn't start today. It is something that has been in my blood. And it will interest you to know I came to the US as a refugee.
As a refugee from Nigeria, and prior to that, you were very involved pro-SDF at some time. But even before the days when you were rooting for the SDF, you were considered as subversive by one of your school principals because you had very, very fiery opinions, and you were hungry for issues that were related to human rights. We've been able to verify that. We've been able to gather that information. So I wanted to put that out there.
Allergic. I am from childhood, very allergic to injustice. Very, very allergic. I don't like to see the powerful one try to take advantage of the small man.
But Mr. Ayo, do you realize today that people don't see that in you anymore, but they see a warlord?
Well, because of the situation that presents itself. By the way, I don't look like a warlord, haven't it? I look like an activist, an advocate, because I don't think I am commanding any war. I'm just out here doing the work of advocacy.
You were the elder brother of one of the fiercest, one of the most feared rebels or Ambazonian leaders, military leaders, Field Marshal. And so you cannot say you were not commanding any army, any military. And you say you were president of the Ambazonia interim government, so you were a commander-in-chief.
Let me tell you something, a story that I don't think I have ever shared, this story that nobody knows. I visited Cameroon before the war, the very month the war started, October 2016. I left like a month before the war started. I got here and the war started. My junior brother, Field Marshal, called me and said he is putting together his army to go to the BLM and fight. I laughed. Believe me, I never for once took him seriously. Never for once. That is to tell you, some people might think that Chris Ano sent his brother to go and fight. Never. He called me and said he is putting together his colleagues, his friends, to go and fight. He was in Yaoundé. He was living in Yaoundé. And he was in their army, like a lot of Republic Cameroon's army. He abandoned the uniform and said he is going back to the PLM to put together his team to fight. When he told me that, I just laughed. I thought, you can do that? You think you can do that? I didn't take him seriously until one early morning, I was dropping my wife at work, and I got a phone call. No, I got a video clip from somebody whose name, if I mention, you will know, the Prince of Libya. He sent me a video clip. I listened to the clip. I saw others in the clip. I did not see my brother in the clip, but I heard his voice. Then I called back the Prince and said, who is this? Who is talking here? Is it Oliver? Is it my brother? He said, yes, that is Oliver, because his face did not show in the clip. So it occurred to me, so this guy really meant it. So that is to say that I did not send him to go and fight. Did I support him? Of course. Others would not be dying for others, and my own brother feels the need to go and fight for his people, and I say, don't go. He was an adult. He had the right to make the choice.
So with the many factions of Ambazonia, which of the factions actually have a grip on the ground? Who is the one who announces the ghost towns? Do you guys consult before you arrive at these decisions, and who announces the ceasefires?
There is consultation between the home front and the leadership in the diaspora. We discuss and we agree on the dates. Why they are announcing, we are announcing.
And then another thing, Mr. Tchiroma who is clearly the star of the current electoral campaigns in Cameroon. He's promised to release all political prisoners. Are you going to hand over power back to, or would you leverage and advocate that power be handed back to Sisiku if he were released from jail?
Why should power be handed to anybody when people are picked up in the course of a struggle? That moment is over. That moment has passed. They will have to come out and join the leadership that is here at the moment. Of course, I'm not the leader at this moment, but if they were to come out tomorrow, what the right thing for them to do would be to sit down with the current leadership and say, how can we work together?
More questions are coming in and more remarks. Ethel Esabe, who I believe is Southwest based, says extended ghost towns have brought untold hardships, and this is an entrepreneur, untold hardships to people residing in the Northwest and Southwest. You want to make any comments to that?
I believe he or she is very right, very correct, especially a lockdown that stretches for more than a month. However, I really love them to know we do not do this because we want to punish them. We do it for strategic reasons. We have made it very clear. Our school calendar year can no longer be the same with La République du Cameroon's calendar year. This also coincided with their elections on October the 12th, an election we have banned in Ambazonia. So it was necessary to call this long lockdown because of these two events that coincided. But we feel the pain of our people and I want to assure them, at the end of the day, when this is all over, they will be glad they did. They sacrificed.
Mark Boulan is asking, you talked about a referendum. Since you don't believe in La République, have you thought of a third party who can help organize a referendum? Have you approached any third parties to help organize a referendum?
Well, you cannot start approaching a third party until there is agreement between the two parties on a referendum, because it is not in our place to impose who organizes it. It has to be agreed between the two parties. So if Cameroon and Ambazonia agree on a referendum, the next question is who is going to organize it? Of course, it cannot be Cameroon. It cannot be Ambazonia. It would have to be a neutral party. Maybe the United Nations. The United Nations would be the best party to do it. Or maybe the EU, or maybe the AU, any of these organizations, or maybe the Commonwealth, any of the organization that is able to ensure a fair and free referendum.
With 5 minutes left for us to go, quick question to you. Foreign news, because La République, you do not identify with the Republic of Cameroon anymore, but you've observed, just like you observe other countries, the United States, China, you've observed the political dynamics of La République du Cameroon. You've observed, I'm sure, the grotesque injustice that Maurice Kamto experienced in the Constitutional Council and ELECAM. Do you want to make any comments about that and how it impacts, or it could, in the long term, impact talks with Ambazonia?
Well, I really don't have any point to make that. That is their country. We have been fighting for our own country.
Aren't we interconnected? Even though you believe it's a different country, there are people who are married in this English-speaking parts of the country. There are people who are married, Anglophones who are married to French-speaking people, and their policies affect the Cameroonian policies affect the Northwest and Southwest. We have crude oil in the Southwest, for example. So isn't it short-sighted to just say it's not your business and you don't care when the world is so interconnected?
Well, let me ask you, does the fact that some Ambazonians are married to Americans, does that mean that I have to be so concerned with what America Constitution is doing and so on and so forth? Absolutely not. Ambazonians even today are free to marry in La République du Cameroon, and La Républicans are free to marry Ambazonians, but that doesn't change the fact that we want separate borders with Cameroon. If Cameroon politicians want to maintain the status quo where one man lords it over them constitutionally, that is their business.
My childhood friend has a remark to make to you. His name is Alex the Don, but Alex Amwam. And he says, in which war school did you learn this strategy? Your people are the ones suffering, not Yaoundé. Do you want to make a comment to that?
Well, I guess he's a little ignorant there. He has to understand this is a war situation and people will always suffer in war. Look at Liberia, look at Sierra Leone, look at South Sudan, look at Angola, look at South Africa. Come on, this is war. There will be suffering. But the good thing is that after suffering, there is always light at the end of the tunnel.
Mr. Anu, we have it here from you. I'm just going to make a quick resume of some of the things that have been stated. Issa Tchiroma and you are familiar with each other, but you are not best friends. You were not aware that he was traveling to Bamenda and only discovered it on social media.
You sent it to me, actually.
Okay, I'll give you that, which is true. I sent it to you. So you were not aware about his campaign plan. You do not trust Francophone politicians. You're not interested with their antics. You're supporting and you're not endorsing or supporting any candidate. You are in a full-fledged war. You want Anglophones to understand that they would suffer, but there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. You're not stopping people, children from going to school anymore. You're allowing them to go to community schools. Community schools are schools that are promoted by Anglophones and not La République. Mission schools are some of them, and private schools is what you stated. And correct me if I missed something. But also, you really do not want to endorse any candidate from La République. You show yourself as completely uninterested with their business, with their politics, and with their policies. Do you want to make a comment about the SDF as we wrap up? Because I know at some point you advocated for them. Frundi was the man of the moment in the 90s. He pulled crowds. He was super charismatic. He was intrepid. And then as life comes in seasons, his own time, his own season transitioned into another politician and maybe another one right now. Any comments you want to make about the SDF now? Yesterday, Senator Mochigo found himself trapped in some kind of a quagmire, ambushed by the Minat into a meeting which turned into a political rally, whereas he had been summoned by the Secretary General of the region of Boya, of the Northwest, on grounds that the Minat was going to be having a working session, as he's been doing in all the different regions of the country. The man hurried to Bamenda and was told they were going to have the meeting with the Minat, and after that, IDPs were going to receive goodies. And in the middle of this, his trip to the Northwest, they told him there was a change of plans and they were going to carry out the gift giving to IDPs before the working session. He was already there. When he arrived there, they quickly transformed it into a CPDM rally, and he felt completely embarrassed. But what happened after that was a communique, a press release came out with the SDF firmly distancing itself from him and stating that he was, by so doing, distancing himself from the party, and the NEC was going to sit. And obviously, when you hear the NEC sitting, that those are disciplinary committee meetings, he might end up with an 8-2. But I contacted him, and he says he provided justification to his Secretary General, who happens to be an adversary of his. At the time, they were both running for the post of vice president in the party, and Senator Mochigo won that election. Today, Njong Donatus, who is the Secretary General, lost that internal election to him. And so clearly, there are some undertones and there are some details within the party that show that there, even after the departure of those 27 barons of the SDF right before the death of Frundi, there still is some kind of turbulence within the party. Do you want to make any comment about that party that many an Anglophone loved and really believed carried the aspirations of the people at some point?
Well, I really can't make any comment about the SDF of today. I don't talk to any of their leaders. I remember visiting Joshua O.C. probably about 11 years ago when he became a member of parliament. And all I can say is the SDF that people talk about today is not the SDF that we all wanted to die for. In those days, it has changed. I remember Chairman John Frundi visiting the US in 2019 and wanted to have a meeting with the Amazonian leaders. Somehow I was delegated to meet with him in Minnesota, and he got so upset that I was the only one who came. I was the only one who came. He wanted everybody to meet with him in a kind of a conference setting. But then I asked him why he doesn't support the Amazonian cause. He said he is all for federation. But you know,
but is that a difference? The SDF has always had that stance. Frundi has always been for federalism. He was a champion of federalism even before it became a hot thing.
No, hold on there. I think you get it a little bit wrong. The SDF was formed under the umbrella of Albert Mukong, and the whole idea was to win power and restore the Federation of 1961. However, the moment Frundi took over, he said he didn't want to divide Cameroon and stop talking federation at that moment. When the war started, the Amazonian war started, that was the only other moment he started talking again about federation. But look at his own way of doing it. He said to me, Chris, I am not supporting you people because I don't like the way you guys are going about it. And I asked him, Chairman, how would you want us to go about it? He said, we should fight for federation first. We fight for federation and then get federation. And perhaps after 10 years, we can then use the gravitas that we have within those 10 years to take back Amazonia. That is by the time he would have died, right? So that is where we differ. the SDF is no longer a relevant party in Cameroon. I'm sorry to say that. It has no gravitas on the ground. So I really cannot advise the SDF that, by the way, that's a La République du Cameroon's political party, not Ambazonia political party. When we get down, we have Ambazonia at hand. We will create our own political formations. In that time, maybe I can advise, but not advising a political party in La République du Cameroon. All we want to see is that any of them win. We are ready to sit down with them to negotiate what becomes of Ambazonia.
Chris Anu, it's been such a delight, as always, having a conversation with you. I appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Chris Anu was our guest this evening. You had it. You heard it from the horse's mouth. He came to clarify about the declarations regarding the declarations made by Issa Tchiroma, but we also had the opportunity to discuss the path forward in the English-speaking parts of Cameroon. Right up until now, he says there will be a continued lockdown. He's not refusing children to go to school, and they've decided that every child has the right to go to a community school, as they call it. It is on that note that we are about to wrap this up, but may I say that tomorrow, same time, Jean-Bénéfice Mevoa is going to be joining us so that we discuss the stakes of the presidential election. The star of the presidential election, Issa Tchiroma, who's been pulling crowds like a virus, who might not necessarily be good for everybody, but who is taking the country by storm. And when I say by storm, when you see the meetings, the tens of thousands of people that this man has been able to pull together and the things he is saying, he seems to be playing on every single right chord. We'll be having that conversation tomorrow as he carries on with the campaign, accompanies Issa Tchiroma on the campaign trail. He's a former Secretary General of the Manidem Party, a faithful of Anise Ekane, and he'll be joining us tomorrow at 3 p.m. local time, 8 p.m. Cameroon time. We'll be glad to have you here again. This has been Angie Forbin on Angie Forbin Live. Stay tuned. And this program or this live is going to be uploaded onto YouTube so that you have the opportunity at your liberty and at your earliest convenience to watch it and share your feedback with us. For those who joined us, I appreciate your time. See you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.